Hi, everyone. This is Nelly van Doornharder speaking on Ordinary People, Saintly Souls. And today I'm showing you a video of an interview that was taped several years ago with Brother Mark, who is a Trappist monk in the Monastery of the Holy Spirit, east of Atlanta, Georgia, and with Sandy Briggs, who I have interviewed several times about her mystical experiences and experiences of heaven. Hope you enjoy their conversation. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing?
Doing fine.
Good morning.
So, you go first, Sandy.
No, I was going to ask you if you had any questions, and go ahead.
Well, what we started off with is that the people who have a near-death experience, like you do, are different, say, from even monks or people who have powerful spiritual experiences. Because in this world, we never really know. Is it real? Is it just psychological? Is my imagination? But if a person actually has a near-death experience, it's very powerful and very real. You don't live in the realm of faith anymore. In other words, I live in the realm of faith, even though I've had powerful experiences. And as I get older, those experiences get more powerful. But yet, I still have doubts. I do doubt. I have to struggle with those doubts. And so, for instance, when I die and I find out that the afterlife is real, I'm going to be dancing forever. I'll never stop because I know that it's the love that is what we all seek. So you people are in a very different place. Even though there are millions of you, you're still a big minority, and I would think it's a lonely place. And I think one of the reasons I study near-death experiences is I'm really interested in the human experience that people have. People have powerful human experiences. And, we have a consensus reality that we all agree that is real, but it really isn't. I mean, people are having powerful experiences all the time, but they just don't talk about them. So nobody knows. For instance, if I talk with a group with more than 20 people, there are at least 3 or 4, if they have the courage, they'll raise their hand and say they've had a near-death experience. And some will share them, So what do you think about that?
It is very difficult to share. Even amongst experiencers, there are people who experience the spirit realm, but they don't encounter God, or, and many of us do. So, I don't know why some do and some don't, but some of them, because they haven't experienced God, they still do not believe there is God. So, I mean, that is still out there, but they do experience that they lived on in the spirit. So that's getting there, and yeah. I mean, I don't argue with any of them. I have to be open because I do help with a website, a forum that helps experiencers, and it's closed to the public because we need to have a place to share our experiences without ridicule, without people not believing and so forth. I mean, to integrate these experiences, we have to be honest. We have to express it, with others. And that was a very difficult time for me, because when I had my experience in 1984, I had no idea that there was anything out there where I can find other experiences, because I didn't even know what it was called. It just happened. And then as time went on, I discovered people writing their stories and experiences. And I said, oh, that's very similar to what I experienced. And I eventually joined a couple websites. But I noticed if I joined one that was public, there was always people that wanted to attack me because I experienced God. And I'm like, I'm just telling, my experience. If you don't like it, fine, move on. Don't listen to me. I'm not trying to force it on anybody, but it's difficult because people want to attack us. And and so we kind of fall into the place where we come kind of like a martyr or something, not that we're being killed, but they really attack us viciously. It's really awful. So I did finally find a private forum, and I became a administrator over it so that I can help other experiencers. And that has helped me a lot. to be able to say without having to worry about what I say. I could just put it out there and I'm not going to get attacked. And since I'm administrator, that too, I don't let anybody attack anybody else. We don't do that. But if it's a public forum, oh yeah, there'll be attacks. So it is very, very difficult to share.
It's difficult, it's difficult for us to change our minds. We get very comfortable sometimes. Like I'm Roman Catholic, and being a monk, even though I'm still Roman Catholic, it makes me understand there's a lot more we don't know or understand than what we do. For instance, I've had a few experiences of God's love, which goes totally beyond anything that people are aware of, how powerful that is, that experience God's love in this world for more than a second would destroy you. The body wouldn't be able to handle it. That's how powerful God's love is. But how do you share that with somebody who doesn't believe? I remember one time a guy wrote me, he sounded very young. He said, to believe that God loves me or that he's aware of me is irrational. And I says, well, your ideas of God are too small. God is not us. He's not God is not even a being. Being comes from God or flows from God. He's not a supreme being, but God is way beyond anything we can comprehend. But yet, as a Christian, I would say that he did reveal himself in Christ as this is what the Father is like. The Father is love. And in Christianity, we that's one of the first things we forget. We can preach it, but we don't live it, or we don't really say it or show it because we don't have it integrated. And it takes a lifetime, I think, for that to happen for most of us. And it's an interesting journey. I think one of the biggest problems that people have is they forget that they're pilgrims, that we're not here permanently. And, experience of time, let me tell you an experience I had last week up in the infirmary. I'm back in the infirmary now. I'm not in charge anymore, but I'm working up there. I do the 3:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. shift. That's before mass. And I was doing laundry, and I was coming down with the laundry. And well, when I was in the infirmary, I was there for 30 years before I became retreat master. And I've been here now for 8 years. But as I was walking down the hallway, sometimes I relive past experiences that come on me very powerfully. And it's like they're happening right now. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
But this was different. I was walking down the hallway and I saw myself. I became a 92-year-old walking down the hallway with my walker. And I'm thinking, what is going on? It's like life is not really, it's not much different than the dream world. And it's, in a way, I believe the dream world is real. I think the world is more real. But yet, was I really experiencing myself at 20 years from now? I don't know. But the experience was, time goes by so quick that it seems like a dream when you actually stop long enough to think about it. Does that make sense? I'm 73 years old. I entered here at 22, and it's like I entered last weekend. And that could be consoling, but also it could be kind of scary. And I think we have to, once we understand that, if we can integrate that into our lives, that understanding of how rapidly our life goes by, that we can put our values in the right place, which means we have an immortal soul we need to take care of. And that's one of the first things people forget. They forget all about that. And if you don't take care of your soul, you're going to find another way, something else to worship. Could be success, could be drugs or alcohol, could be sex, it could be anything. But in the end, it always ends up disappointing us.
Mhm.
But
Those
God
are
never
the
does.
idols that God's referring to when we
That's
place
right.
something else in front of ourselves. And I think a lot of people don't understand what it means as idol worshiping. People worship money, or like you said, sex, or
That's right.
different things. That's idol worshiping. And people go astray because it's harmful to them. Yeah.
So can I ask you a question? What was your belief system before you had your near-death experience?
I was raised as a Christian, but I moved I was born in Pennsylvania, and as a child, when I was really young, my mom took me for a little bit, and then it quit for some reason. I don't know why. And I was still had an interest, and I had my own Bible. My grandmother gave me one, and she was a Sunday school teacher, but I read it on my own. And every now and then, didn't read it every day, but I was interested and I wanted to learn more. And I would receive the messages, but I just didn't understand them. Even when I was young, that there was communication going on with me in spirit that I didn't understand. I think it's because I was open to it. Because I asked my mom, I said, does God really exist? And she said, well, it's better to be safe than find out that it is real and we didn't follow, God. So anyways, I kept my mind open to it. And I always wished that I could find God, and discover things and help from God. But I never really thought that would happen, And I said, I wish I could find somebody that would teach me and explain all this to me, but there was nobody to do that. But then when I grew a little older as a child, we stopped going to church. And then I asked my mom, why don't we go to church? And then that's made her think, and she started taking me back to church. And so we weren't really consistent churchgoers, but I never abandoned God, in my thoughts. I wanted to learn more about it. So anyways, after I grew up, and I had a number of different tiny episodes in the spirit that, those really was scary at first, because they're really, now they're nothing compared to what I've had later in life. So I'm like, that wasn't so bad to experience those minor, but they were like stepping stones. You build one on top of another. And the more you experience, the more you can handle. And then you get more and more intense experiences. And then I finally got to the point where I didn't like this world because it was so violent. And I went out of here. I said, I don't belong here. Something's wrong. I don't like it. And I didn't want to live. I was stuck in depression. And when that came to the point where I said, this is it, I do not want to live tomorrow. I'm not going to be here. I don't want to live another day. And I prayed to God with all my life, with all my heart, and that I didn't want to live. And that night I was taken, it's now I know, called like an out of body experience. I was taken out of my body and taken into the light in the presence of God. And so I witnessed God that manifested as a father figure. But now I've experienced God not being like that. So I've seen it both ways. And so, in the Bible, it talks about God on the throne. In Judaism too, of course, they talk about God on the throne. And I experienced that, but I didn't really expect that. I just thought I was going to die and that's it. It's all over. But when I had that experience, I was only in the presence of God for a very, very short time. But I was so excited. You talk about bliss. I was just overflowing with joy. And I just call it, it's like ecstasy. It was just so amazing. I can't even put words into how strong that love is, like you were saying. And then I started thinking, well, how did I get here? I said, well, I must have died. Because, what am I doing here? I'm supposed to be, on the earth. But then I didn't really even think about my life on earth. I was just focused on what was happening right there in God's presence. And then someone appeared beside God and stood up and held out his hand to me. And I just understood that I'm supposed to go with this person. So anyways, I went to touch his hand. And then before I even touched, I was like about an inch away from that hand. I went back instantly into my body, it came in through my chest, and I felt my spirit fill up this physical body. I felt myself from head to toe, all the way down to my fingers and my toes, just felt it being poured. My spirit was like liquid, and it was just pouring into my physical body. And then I felt very strange for a while because I could feel my spirit self and this physical body, but it was more like it was a cage, or I call it a vessel. So, all these people it's like we're driving our own human vehicles. And, but it was such a strange sensation. And that's I didn't want to feel like that because I felt too. And then it was, I say, it was like my body was like a sponge and the spirit was liquid. And then my physical body soaked up my spirit. And then I became one entity, one being. But now I know that we are spirit. Oh, excuse me. I got a tickle in my throat. I know that we are spirit, and that's the part that is eternal. And the physical body, that is the mortal part, but it's just a vehicle, and it really don't matter, because, when we pass, out of this life, if we come back to this life, God will give us another vehicle, So whether we upgrade or downgrade or whatever, we do. But so I knew without a doubt, that God is real. And I wanted to just shout from the tops of the mountains. I'm just so excited. I said, God loves everybody. There's, I knew that without a doubt. And I mean, he didn't have to tell me. You feel it. God's love is so powerful. And I wanted everybody to know how much they're loved by God. And so, but every time I tried to think about that experience, it would just go in my mind, and I wanted to experience it all over again. And I could never write it down. And finally, about 10 years later, I started writing it down. And then I would ask questions, to God, this experience that I had, I still wish that I could share it, because when I would, people just think I made it up, or it was a delusion, or, a dream or something like that. And there is difference. I mean, we have a dream state, which is not real. Then we have this existence, which, when we're awake, we know what that feels like. But in the spirit realm, that was more awake than this.
Yeah.
This reality, that was really reality. And this was like a dream. And then our dream state, so there's different levels of consciousness. And so I was just wanted to learn more, because it was so fun to have that experience, and I wanted to experience it again. So I'll stop there, because I think I'm rambling on, and I can go on forever.
One of the books I read on near-death experiences, that the man said that people get what they need. For instance, an atheist, sometimes they have the most powerful experiences. That's what they need in order, for God to break through to them, and other people, different levels. But one of the things, I think what happened to you, I'm not sure you died. I think though you were under so much stress because you were in danger of dying. In other words, they said that people can have the same experience when the body's under a great deal of stress. So it's just that I think you got what you actually needed, because you were so intent. And you told God how serious you were because you wanted to die. He took you for your word, and he helped you.
Mm-hmm.
When I've had powerful spiritual experiences, I don't always know that I'm in a bad place, but the Lord does. For instance, did I tell you about when I went up to Gethsemane to do I went up to Gethsemane, which is our mother house in Kentucky, Trappist Monastery. And so I stayed at a hermitage for a week, and then I was going to go up to the monastery for 3 days there. And it's very difficult doing a hermitage retreat. You're just totally by yourself. I was writing, and I was doing everything I was supposed to do. But the last night that I was there, fell into despondency. It's like I shouldn't have come up here. I'll never do this again. I'm not good at this. I mean, I was really despondent. It was like, why do I even bother? So I really think that I was in a place of spiritual emergency, but I didn't realize it. Okay. Because, like most humans, we're kind of fragmented, aren't we? There's lots of different personalities that kind of live in us that we haven't really integrated. So I went to sleep. And so a lot of my breakthroughs come through dreams. And so in this dream, this woman came to me, and she was dressed in black. She had a black veil. She had it wasn't a negative dream. It was a very positive dream. And she pointed to me to this blackness, and she wanted me to enter into this dark space. well, are you nuts? No, I'm not going to do that. That's not what I said, but that was what I was thinking. So she shrugged and she stepped into the darkness. And when that happened, the reason I talk about you can only experience God's love for a fraction of a second is because I experienced God's love in that moment. It was like a sword went through my heart. It's like, I'm going to have to show you how much I love you, Mark. And, this despondency, it's just taken over, and we're really going to have to work on this. Man, he just shoved that sword right through my heart. And I woke up panting and gasping and sat up on the side of my bed. And I was like, what just happened? And that happened in 2006. And I still think about it. Now, that was a very strong, powerful example of God's love. In other words, he was letting me know, although God can't get frustrated, that he was frustrated with me, and he wanted to show me the power. So I experienced it. So about 3 years later, and it did affect me. It changed me. My trust in God was much deeper, and my love of God was growing. And I went up to up to New Jersey. There was a spiritual director up there. It's a sister. I went up there for a week again, kind of a hermit thing. They had a labyrinth in the back that I walked twice a day, and I wrote about it. So I would go down, we have the Eucharist. You know what the Eucharist is? It's so it's very important to Catholics, and we have the Eucharist here. I love to go in front of the Eucharist. But back then I had trouble going in front of the Eucharist because I always felt like there was a laser beam going through me. It was uncomfortable. So I would stay for a while, but then I would leave. So that morning I went down and I sat in front of the Blessed Sacrament, closed my eyes, and I figured, well, I'll get through this. I'll just have to get through this. But then something happened. I started feeling God approaching me. This is totally different. It was very gentle, almost hesitant because he didn't want me to run away, loving, compassionate, empathetic, everything. And he filled me. You talked about liquid. It's what it felt like. And I was filled with this indescribable love and tenderness, and something to this day, I'm still not used to that. Most men, we have to struggle with that. It's like the more tender emotions don't come to us that easy. As I get older, that's changing. And then I started crying, and I'm not one to cry either. And I was crying and crying, and I said, what's going on? But I knew I had to stay there. All right, I had to stay there. And nobody walked into the church during that whole time. It went on for 30 minutes. And then it very gently receded. And I was kind of told at some levels that it was really the same thing, that it was a continuation of what happened in 2006, that happened in 2009 was a continuation of that act of God showing his love towards me. Now, the second experience, after the Lord got my attention with this whole sort of thing, second experience, of course, had more power. Because, ultimately, what is it we all seek? Sandy, we want to be seen, don't we? We want to be seen, and we want to be loved. And the problem with human nature is we see and we don't love, or we see and we stereotype, or we see pain and we want to run away from it. But God doesn't do that. I think that in Christ's passion, his passion is that he couldn't protect himself from the sufferings of other people. He saw, and he couldn't label or stereotype. He was too free. We're stereotyping all the time. Most of us, I still do, in order to protect myself. And God's grace, I really believe it's God's grace that allows our heart to become more human. Like what happened with you, it made you more human, didn't it? Your fears drop, you become more tender and more kind, and more compassionate. That's human, So I was very thankful. The Lord was very generous with me in doing that. But I think the reason it happened in both times is because I was in a spiritual emergency and I didn't know it. And I think that's why people get those experiences. You're unusual because you actually asked for it and you got it. I mean, you knew you were in a deep, but most of us, we're not sure. We're not really, and then that's one of the Lord's. I call that the Emmaus experience. You know what that experience is in the scriptures, where the two men are leaving Jerusalem after Jesus' death, and then Jesus appears to them and walks with them.
And they don't know who he is. Yeah.
So I think in Christianity, Christians have the Emmaus experience, and then unbelievers who are seeking God have the Damascus experience. It's like St. Paul, from one moment to the next, his whole life was turned upside down. No wonder the guy went blind. I mean, I don't know how he could have been able to withstand such a change, because all of a sudden the reality of Christ was so positive and there before him, everything flipped.
Right, because he used to persecute the Christians. He was trying to destroy them.
He even murdered some. Well, Stephen,
Yes, I love Stephen. Yeah.
So
it's amazing. Go ahead.
No, go on. Well, I just want to ask you one question. Does your family accept you?
Oh, they know me and I am an honest person. But when I talk about my experiences, I don't feel that they're real open to it because they haven't experienced it.
That's right.
That was difficult because I could have nobody to turn to share it with in my own family. They just thought it was a dream. And I said, it wasn't a dream. But
yeah,
you can't get people to understand if they're not open to it.
Yeah, there's a lady that comes here. Do you believe in the demonic?
It exists, but I don't encounter that.
Yeah, well, I've had some. Well, again, it's the same thing. I've had some experiences when I was a young monk with the demonic. So this woman comes and she starts telling me experiences. She's getting burn marks and everything.
No.
And so she said, "You don't believe me, do you?" I said, "I do and I don't." I said, "I've had experiences." I said, "I do believe that there's a demonic reality." I said, "However," I said, "I have to listen to you more, but no, I'm not outright rejecting you because I've had the experience." Now, if I didn't have the experience, I would say, "Well, you need to see a psychiatrist." And I'm still not sure. But it's important, like I've had some experiences. So when people like you that had full blown, you've been in it before God, I can accept it because I know that I've had some pretty powerful experiences, not that far, but a lot of people, if I tell them my experiences, their jaw drops, well, it's true though. And so I'm sure some people might think I'm crazy, but I feel like sometimes when I give talks to people, especially about God's love and God's mercy, I will share those experiences with them, and let them know that it's real.
I know that we're supposed to testify. When we have experiences with God, we're supposed to share. But in this world, there's so many people that don't understand or they didn't experience it. So they shut their ears. They don't want to listen to it. And, it's not helpful, but the people who are willing to listen, we can be helpful to them. And that's why I share. I mean, I'm not want to force anybody to believe me, but even though I'm being as honest as I possibly can, I don't believe in being deceptive or anything. I mean, I'm just telling it like it is, like it happened. But I welcome people to ask me questions or whatever, and to try to explain it further. And but if they're not open to it, I just don't share with them. Yeah,
I think that when people are afraid to open up. I remember us on a psychological level. There was a good friend of mine. We're still good friends. She's a Jewish lady. I love the Jewish people, and she had this really mother issue with her mother, and just really, really angry with her mother. Angry all the time. So one day I was talking with her. I said, "Who would you be if you weren't angry?" Just what do you mean? I said, "Well, I mean, you're always angry." I said, "Well, who would you be? Would you be Susan anymore?" And I didn't really realize that I planted a seed because she walked away and she spent like 6 months thinking about that. And she came back and she told me. And so then about 4 years later, I was at the airport picking somebody up. It was like 1995. And back then I had a cell phone because I was the prior and I had to have one. She called me I said, Susan, I said, it's really time for you to reconnect with your mother. You have to call your mother before it's, because she was old, that you can't continue. Your mother is not that person that she was 40 years ago, and she has moved on. That thing in your head is not your mother, it's your own imagination. And she said that was a big breakthrough for her. She didn't really realize that that is kind of a dream state. You know, he's just responding to somebody who existed 40 years ago. Well, the mother has moved on, right? So they did reconnect, you know, and what I'm saying is you do plant seeds in people, even if people reject you, there's a seed being planted. Some people are afraid to believe because they don't want to be disappointed. And, but you put a seed in there, you know, and it will grow. You pray for them, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
We're
Yes.
called to pray for everybody.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel sadness for the people who are really antagonistic and you know, they want to spew poison at us for sharing things like this. And I'm like, you know, I'm not doing anything wrong. So, and it's like they want me to admit that I'm just making it up or something. I'm not going to deny the truth, you know. So either if you don't want to believe me, just move along. You know?
You have to have a thick skin. I remember one time somebody, why do you always talk about God and faith? And so this other guy responded. I said, are you kidding? You're coming to a Trappist website, a monk, and you wonder why. He says, why do you even come here? I mean, it's like going to an atheist website and getting tired of them talking about atheism. You know, of course I
Yeah,
want to talk about God,
absolutely.
spiritual life. Yeah.
Can
Ever
I-
since, go
Can I
ahead, Natalie.
interrupt for 1 minute? 1 second. I'm going to. Well, thank you, Brother Mark and Sandy. I think you made us think a lot today, and because we've been touching on so many topics. I'm going to my notes here. First of all, both of you were talking about that God is love. The divine, the Father, the Mother is love. And then we forget that we so easily forget that. And you, Brother Mark, I think this was before we were taping, said that it really takes a lifetime to learn that. And that God's, during our lifetime, during our pilgrimage, really, on earth, gives us experiences every time again and again till we get it. Sometimes God loses patience with us, but keeps giving, keeps teaching us till we get it. And I also like the idea that when you were talking about your experiences, Sandy, it's and actually both of you, what you bring home is that time is not linear. Time is not what we made of it with clocks and hours and days. Time can be an eternity can be an instant in an instant. And it says in the Bible that to God, 1 day is like 1,000 years. And so that we experience time, we try to catch it in our human vehicles, but the reality is different. And so before we end this segment of our talk for ordinary people, saintly souls, I would like to invite both of you, Sandy and Brother Mark, to say a final word.
Okay, I'll go first, Sandy. I think that when people start living a spiritual life, it's very common at the beginning that things are really wonderful and calm because you're being led to more aware of your inner world. But then there comes a point in time when you have to, you know, you can only be healed by experiencing what needs to be healed. You can only heal a wound unless you actually, well, it's pain. So the spiritual life is also about dealing with what needs to be healed. And that's also an aspect of God's love. And in the Christian tradition, that's called the desert experience, where it's pathless. You know, the desert seems cold and lifeless, but actually it isn't. All sometimes just to put one foot in front of the other one. And not to forget that this life ends and we need to be patient with ourselves. And it does take a long time sometimes for this healing to take place.
I think that a lot of people don't realize because they're taught through cultures or just in their own sect of religion, that they think of God being vengeful, that a warring God. And I'm like, that's not the God that I experienced. And I don't know that type of characteristics in God. So I can only address God as how I experience God. And to me is like, why would you ever want to? It doesn't make sense to say things that is not divine, you know, those attributes that God warned us and gave us rules for us to live by. And if you really understood that it's all coming from love. And so wherever we journey on our life here on earth, if we always think about God as love, I think it could change the hearts, and instead of people being led by fear, because fear is not of God and fear is not of love. Love is not fear, it's the opposite, you know. So I think we need to keep that in mind, to always, you know, focus on that, knowing that we are loved. That would make a lot of difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you both for reminding us that we really need to be patient with ourselves, that we have to realize we're students in a lifelong journey, and that sometimes it takes time to develop certain types of knowledge, and that the spiritual knowledge is an important type of knowledge, and that we should allow ourselves to take it in and to start understanding it step by step. Thank you both for this important lesson today. Thank you again, Sandy Briggs. And thank you, Brother Mark, from the Trappist Monastery of the Holy Spirit, which is 25 miles south of Atlanta, right? In Georgia.
East
of Atlanta. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us today. This is Nelly van Doorn Harder for the channel Ordinary People, Saintly Souls, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time.